Well, once again, this past week was a fairly good week as far as production and catching fish goes. But as we moved through the week toward this past weekend, there was a considerable difference in our tide and how much the water had dropped out, especially as we got towards Saturday and Sunday. We were in negative tides, I think Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So that was a big thing we had to really take in consideration depending on where we wanted to fish based on our tide reports early in the morning. So if you do keep up with the tide reports, which you should, it will help you eliminate water pretty quickly before you get on the water, depending on where you want to fish. And then on the top of that, once you kind of figure out what kind of tide you're going to have to contend with throughout your fishing morning or day, then you can put yourself in a situation where you know there's some deeper water access, that you know that probably the grass flatter area that you're going to fish is going to be pretty skinny. So those fish want to drop off into something deeper. So our deal again, water temps are starting to creep. We're into August. Air temps are starting to creep in the upward direction. So we're starting to get into the low 90s, mid 90s during the day. So we're seeing a big result with our water temps starting to creep up. We're starting to see the 88s to 89s. And that upcoming week doesn't look like there's going to be a whole lot of change in that whatsoever. So again, targeting reefs, those types of areas, some deep water access close by. So we're fishing out here, false live oak, around the rock beds and the walls that are out there, both inside and outside. It's kind of hard to wade that area on the outside. It's a little bit deeper than what I like to contend with, so we did a few little drift trips or drift passes across that if the wind set up for us pretty well. And the wind was pretty good this past week, so that enabled us to be able to do that, working that. Again, the reefs out here in San Antonio Bay, out here toward Chickenfoot, right here off the ICW. That's a great thing about that. These reefs are close to that deep water. So as the morning would creep, we would be up on these reefs, work all those areas there. And again, if you've been in San Antonio Bay, like you're heading down towards Seadrift or Ostwell, you see all these reefs that are out there, and a lot of them were sticking out of the water, especially toward the end of the week, even more so, because we got into pretty decent negative tides. So some of this, if you're running up here, so I pretty much stayed in the ICW running there instead of trying to do some of the cut throughs, which we could do, but just to be on the safe side, we just kept the deep water access until we got into San Antonio Bay and get close to those reef areas. We just dropped the boat, we get out, whether we had 2 people, 3 people, 4 people, these reefs will support that, a number of people that you can spread them out across that and work that. Really works well if you got 3 people, so that gives you plenty of room to work the tapered edge of the reefs that are out there, and then you can work the drop-off edge of the reefs. And then, of course, as the water temp gets a little warmer, we were fishing. We were getting in waist to belly deep water, throwing out to about chest to 4 or 5 foot of water, and continually finding some fish in that. Now we went through a bunch of smaller fish, those 13 to 14 inchers. Caught quite a few of those. But then probably about every, I'd say 6 or 8 fish we'd catch a solid fish that'd be in that 17 to 19 range. And it was pretty consistent, primarily during our major this past week. We really worked around that. Worked a late day on one particular day and tried to work the minor and see if that would work for us later in the day, it was somewhat good. It wasn't great, but it would still lead us to a little bit of production, fishing those types of areas. Like I say, we spent a lot of time up here on a couple of different days working in and around these reefs up here in San Antonio, and working these areas here. Again, like I said, up here around False Live Oak, here on the shoreline, out here on the grass line edge, where, again, I say when that water level starts to drop out like that, some of the area gets super skinny. It's starting to, your ground is starting to be exposed, so you want to be able to find that edge where you can drop off and fish that deeper water later in your morning, or even start your day out doing that, especially with the water temp they're starting to creep up toward that 90-degree mark to start your day off. So we were trying to be on the water by, no later than 6:30, getting into some of these areas and fishing that and working those areas there. Like I say, trout, pretty prevalent in here. Again, your this upcoming week, if you're getting to have a chance to be on the water, whether it's up in this area or in Aransas Bay or Copano and those areas, work those reefs to start your day out. Unless you've got some really good hard-packed sand with the grass beds that are submerged, you've got little satellite patches of grass in and around those types of areas. Those are also holding some fish. And ever so often you'll stumble into a redfish unless you're just trying to specifically target redfish. Then you're kind of changing up your tactics somewhat. The main things that we were throwing this past week, now that we're in our transition days and we're headed toward that full moon, we were still, mid-sized baits, 3 to 4 inch baits, burner shads, mirror lures, knocking tails, pav lures on the smaller side. That's really where the main baits that we kind of focused in through. Knocking tail has a new, what they call the knocking shrimp. I know Marker 54, we've thrown it quite a bit in the past couple of weeks, and it's done pretty well for us. But this new bait that Knocking Tail has come out with, it's a segmented shrimp tail, but it's got the rattles built into it, and it's about a 3-inch shrimp. And I got my hands on some of those, and they did pretty well as well. So remember the one thing about fishing up in San Antonio Bay, you don't have any protection up there if you got a really strong southeast breeze, because it can really blow that water system out pretty quickly and get it dirtied up. So if you have like the knocking tails where it's got the rattles built into it, that's a helpful thing for you. So it just kind of helps you locate fish, or let the fish locate your bait somewhat. Main baits, color-wise, pretty much the standard ones we've been throwing. Twisted Tea, Big Papa, Bone, White Ice, Watermelon Red, The Truth. Golden Red Glitter seemed to be just a little bit better for us this past week when we were throwing it, with a lot of good action on it, and working those in and around the shell beds and shell bars. And then, of course, we were getting off into working the little bit deeper edges. Like I say, as that sun would creep up, start getting into late morning, the water temp starting to creep up a little bit. We were starting to throw into that 4 to 5 foot of water and locating fish. As long as you had some grass or maybe something good structurally around there, some deeper shell beds, that's where we located some fish in and around these types of areas. The knocking tail pretty much was the greenback and the rogue flavor. Again, what I talked about in the Mirror Lure Litter John was the Watermelon Red and the Truth mainly, and then sprinkled in there was the Golden Red Glitter, did pretty well for us. And then, of course, the Marker 54, the Jerk Shrimp, it did okay. And then, of course, that one I was just talking about, the Knocking Tail Rattling Shrimp, did pretty good as well, especially when the water got just a little bit off color, a little bit more stain. Like I say, the wind was not terrible for us this past week, so it did really well as far as holding the watercolor and the clarity on us. So it didn't hurt us from that aspect. But again, we try to work the minors when we could, majors primarily, and just kind of extended our bite frame in around that time frame. But again, this upcoming week, with our temperature starting to creep toward those mid to upper 90s as we get into the daytime areas, you're going to really want to make sure that you have deep water access to your shallower water fishing in the mornings. Out here on the front of St. Joe, starting down here at Allen's and working all the way up to the Mott. We just worked these outer edges, just kind of picked a spot out where there wasn't hardly any boats that were parked anywhere around. A lot of wade fishermen this past week in the water, which is a great thing. Love to see it. Sometimes this out here can get kind of busy, especially as you get toward the weekends, but during the middle of the week, it was not bad at all. Like I say, you could put 300 or 400 yards in between you and another boat and not infringe on anybody else's fishing area. So we worked the outer edges here. Like I say, we tried to get early and get on the grass beds up shallow. We tried to get in that, thigh to waist deep water, working the shallower grass beds. But again, that's what I was just talking about. And as that sun would creep up, we're starting to get around 10, 11 o'clock. If you haven't found your trout, you're going to want to try to find them at a deeper area. So that's a great thing about out here is you can find some deeper grass beds. Nice hard pack. If you fish St. Joe shoreline here from Allen's up to Mott, it's a nice solid bottom that's in there. A lot of scattered grass. So and that's primarily our goal was here. And then of course when you get up here close to the Mott, you'll have a little bit more shell that gets mixed in. Again, you have it a little bit deeper drop. You got deep water access. It's close by. And these types of areas like that really set up for you. And of course, if you fish in the Mott, This particular shoreline right here has got scattered shell and it's a lot of hard pack and scattered grass that's on it all the way out to the point, and of course that'll carry you around to Long Reef Bend. But we primarily focused our area from the Mott down to Allen's and working all the grass early till late morning. We did not spend any time past noon-ish out here on this outer edge like that. So if any of the fish that we found trout-wise, they were going to be, in that thigh-deep to belly-deep water early on. And it was pretty consistent. Again, we had to go through a lot of smaller fish. Found a bunch of those. They're all scattered in here. A bunch of that's going on right now. So, again, we anticipated August to be and typically it is, it's a hotter month. Usually the hottest one that we have to contend with. But realistically, our summer has not been terrible by any means. June and July were pretty mild for the most part. Now, August may make up for that for us. Just like I say, looking at the long range, we're going to be in the 90s for the most weeks. So it's going to affect the water temps starting off early mornings. So you may be starting out at 88 degrees, maybe 90, depending on where you fish or how you're fishing it. So keep that in mind when you approach this upcoming week in the areas that you want to fish. So you can eliminate a lot of water early, paying attention to what those tide reports. Like I say, we got into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday specifically. Yeah, we were in those really good negative tide areas at that particular time, so it kind of pushes you away from that shoreline right off the bat. But again, when you find you a stretch of water where you got the deeper grass beds and the satellite beds that are out there, and you got bait that's working on, which is still not an issue, that's where we were locating our fish. Again, same baits in the down south, both the original size and the burner shad size. We were throwing quite a bit of those in the flavors I'd mentioned earlier in the Twisted Tea, White Ice, Bone Diamond, based on what your water clarity is. Just kind of pair your darker baits with more stained or darker water, and if you came off a section that had some pretty clean water, then we were throwing a little bit more translucent baits like the Golden Red Glitter, Double D, the Knock and Tail Shrimp. Again, that bait we were using a few days this past week, and it produced pretty well for us. So just kind of keep that in mind as you get ready for this upcoming week. Make sure that you're incorporating that major or minor. The minor will be coming back into play for you, and that may be a late afternoon thing. The majors are going to be earlier in the mornings. So that's kind of what we were focused on this past week mainly. So down here on Copano Bay area, down here past the airport, the runway there in Rockport, Aransas County Airport, we just kind of skipped around working this back shoreline. Again, another lot of hard packed sand that's in there, grass. Just work around the piers. If you fish back in there, there are lots of piers, but there's also some little small secluded little areas that can hold fish from time to time. So we just kind of peppered our way down the shoreline, just working these areas that allowed us to be able to do that. Then of course when we got on some little stretch where it was pretty good, we spent some time just working these little areas. Then all the way here back around the point, back in this little area here on this little shoreline. It's set up pretty good for you. Like I say, wind was not a big factor. Now, once you got into some, say, mid-afternoon to late afternoon, if you were still fishing at that time of day or starting to go out at that time of day, then you had to contend with some wind. Sometimes that does not set up quite as well, so then that's why you come to this front half, and you can work this down all the way down this way, down toward the rocks, all the way back down to this area here. It allows you to be able to do that. That's just, like I say, we just kind of skipped our way around that where the obstruction wasn't a big deal for us, but again, we just spent our time on the hard pack, scattered shell, grass patches that were here and there, and picked up a few fish along the way. But again, the same scenario that we saw. It didn't matter if it was in San Antonio Bay or Aransas Bay or Carlos, whatever. Anytime that we'd work some of these areas, we'd find and catch our fish. But again, we had to really wade through a lot of smaller fish. If you've been fishing the last week or two, you're experiencing somewhat the same thing. Catch the 13 or 14, chunk them back. You may catch 8 or 10 of those before you catch a quality fish. It's 16 to 19 inches, which was the case for us. We just had to work it. The patience working this type of stuff this time of year, especially moving forward into August now. We're just a few days in. So anticipate that. Your bite frames for trout is probably not going to last real long. You may get to 9:30, 10 o'clock, and that trout bite dies off, and that's why I was saying make sure you kind of fish an area where you got some deep water close by that you can kind of see if you can still kind of locate those trout, maybe out deeper, which that has been the case this past week and a half for us. That's been a trend. But after that, then we're trying to, in my brain, I'm thinking secondary location where I can find and locate some redfish to kind of help that out. This will be something that you will need to be able to do, is have you a second and third location that you can hit, maybe even a fourth location depending on the day. Again, we're in our transition days, or wild card days as I like to call them, because you're going to have all different types of bites. And we had a couple of days last week where our bite frame was not very long and the bite became very difficult after that. So we really had to work, and that's where I urge you to make sure that you just be patient. Be patient, stay with your tactics. You'll find fish, you'll catch fish, maybe not at the clip at which you wish to catch at, but that's just part of fishing. But just factor in that kind of stuff. Again, I would stick with your 3 to 4, 4.5 inch baits. Really work those. I'll tell you another bait that's really good this time of year too is the Double D's. Got a smaller profile. You can really bang that thing down on top of those grass beds like that, especially if they're a little bit deeper. If you're fishing 4 foot of water, you can work those down there over top of that, and those fish will suspend over that grass. And one thing that, again, I mentioned, in weeks past, we're still seeing fish that are still having eggs in them, and they're, still looking for an opportunity to lay some of those eggs. So keep that in mind as well. Again, the Little Johns and the XLs were pretty good for us. XL would not be a bad choice for this next week or two. It's not a super big bait, but it's just a little bit fatter profile than what the Little John is. And sometimes you can get just a little bit better quality fish on that particular style bait. But as you work this upcoming week, really focus on your majors. Again, if you can work a minor into it, you'll do yourself a favor. And then just kind of target your early mornings as being your most productive time frame, because as you get in your afternoon hours, the water temps are going to climb and your air temps are too. So keep yourself as comfortable as you can. Make sure you got plenty of water on your boat and stay hydrated out there, because it's not going to do anything but get warmer.